When bombardment happens, or whatever critical incident happens within the child's life, or it somewhat becomes constant threat, the child enters, an environment that they are not used to, or they tend, if it's ongoing, they tend to learn how to be in this new environment. So usually play is disrupted. This is the first thing that gets disrupted because it gets deprioritized by the adults around the child. There is no space maybe to play. There's no other children that are playing or that have the mood to play. And this is often the first activity that is disappearing. So the brain and the nervous system becomes oriented towards vigilance rather than exploration. And children without exploration, they just have no affinity for their future. So in conditions of threat, the brain prioritizes survival functions, scanning for danger all of the time, listening for sudden sounds, watching adults for sudden cues of changes, and which is essentially, away from play. This is not play. It becomes something else, something more edgy, that requires, a constant monitoring for a sense of safety. So when safety also disappears, curiosity naturally contracts. And as a result, a child living under, the threat of bombardment often loses many of the experiences that normally fill childhood. So they may not be able to run freely outdoors, visit friends spontaneously, or gather in parks or playgrounds because most of those, uh, that used to be available services are now disrupted. Uh, Playgrounds might be not available, and play that involves noise and movement or unpredictability may feel unsafe or be discouraged by adults trying to protect them. So, social play can shrink because families remain indoors, or more frequently, in some cases, children restrict their own behavior. They may sit closer, to exits, avoid open spaces, or remain near caregivers rather than wandering off to explore. So this is really harsh for to have a childhood like that, especially when the bombardment is ongoing or the conflict is ongoing. Younger children, as I mentioned, often interpret events egocentrically, meaning they may assume they caused it, or that it is somehow about them. They also use magical thinking a lot. So, trying to turn, an overwhelming reality into stories that they can hold onto. And we usually hear them say something like, the sky is angry, or the building is sick, or the sound is there's a monster there somewhere. In school age children, concentration and memory is a problem. They drop sharply, and we see that immediately after bombardment or after critical incidents, leading to, they get distracted. We feel that they are not there. They're physically there, but their mind is not there. They have a hard time listening to whether it's instructions or information, or they can appear defiant. So there's also that. uh, when the attention is pulled toward, certain monitoring of threats, because this is where the brain economy is going. It's going towards always constant hypervigilance and monitoring. In some children, the reaction is quite the opposite. So we see them self-isolating. They may become emotionally numb. um, it shows in a certain sort of flat affect. So they're not showing affection. They're not showing the usual sense of demeanor that they have. And usually we might see some mature behaviors in younger children, which is a point where we usually be concerned if a child is acting like an adult in certain situations where fear is quite natural. We should teach children who are afraid in certain critical incidents, but they tend to suppress that and act as adults. Um, and it is also a form of shutdown. So that's part of the shutting down of rather than showing resilience. So the key principle, if we may say in change is that from baseline to where we are at, the functioning is impacted. So from how they were to how they are acting right now, we see drastic changes. And one difficult, day is there. We monitor for persistent shifts in sleep, behavior, appetite, and play, which is very, very important for children, and also relationships. And that indicates the child is struggling.